Okay, it says I'm live. Let me know if I have the chipmunk voice issue. Um, so, as you guys can see, I have a very empty office space. So, I did get a pallet in for Vigor, about 768 units. However, I forgot my little cart and someone's going to bring it to me so I can unload it and then get it to Amazon. But for the next 40 minutes or so, I will be streaming. If anyone shows up, that is. So, ugh. This is why you need to plan streams. I also forgot my hair ties. Oh, look, people are here. Hi, Nebby. What all-day extender do I recommend? From Michael. I do not recommend all-day stretchers, that is. Or no, you said all-day extender. I do not recommend all-day extension wear or all-day stretching. However, there is some conflicting evidence for the need of extended length wear. Something I'm looking into more now. But basically, the point is you have to wear it all day. You're probably not going to have enough tension to actually cause tissue fatigue to see growth. So I would not recommend that. For the most part, you will need to do PE for about 1 to 2 hours a day. I prefer to do it either with a hanging or the apex. Michael, if you're going to look for an extender, I would say get the apex extender. If you're looking for like a more handmade option, there is the hog stretcher somewhere on Etsy, but I use the apex predominantly. So guys, just drop your questions. I have nothing planned. So am I still doing 1 day on, 1 day off for pumping? Kinda. Lately, I have been pumping before sex, so that's been almost 5 to 6 days a week. It's not so much that I'm trying to get like thicker right now. It's more or less just trying to get like the added sensitivity for myself with that. That being said, I have not had any issues with erection quality. It's more about how much work you're going to be doing if you need to take 1 day on, 1 day off, rather than like making it one set thing. And Dominus, I've been doing PE for a few months and I started to get a cone shape. What do I need to do to prevent it ASAP? Well, you got to tell me what you're doing. So like I started getting a cone shape from Bathmate. Then the way I fixed it is by getting a pump that would only fit my mid shaft girth. So at that point, I was like almost 7 inches of base girth, and I would squeeze that into a 2 inch cylinder size air pump, and then I was able to over time even it out a lot, like an insane amount. So like my base girth has grown maybe 1/4 of an inch, but during that time my mid shaft girth has grown close to an inch over for the past 4 or 5 years. So like 5 1/4 to 6 1/4, depending on how aroused I am. Michael, the apex is for massive novelties, yes. Is extending plus pumping plus soft clamping too much for girth specific work? It's about the ratio. Um, I'm actually doing a little bit of a video about basically walking back a few things I've said about clamping over the years. But essentially, I still think pumping is going to be your main driver for girth. You don't necessarily need to do extension work, but some kind of way to loosen up the tissues before you pump. And then you're going to want a little bit of clamping to really fill in that new tissue, like the new tissue of the Tunica albuginea. So like you need to be able to fill it with more meat of the sausage than sorry, lost my train of thought. You need to fill it with more meat in the sausage to actually fill out the casing. So that's the point of clamping. Yeah, Dominus, get an air pump that's relatively close to the size of your base girth now, and then you'll slowly see the expansion work its way up the shaft. You can also try a silicone sleeve at the base. My issue is it starts sliding up the shaft and defeats its purpose, but is that's going to lead to like compression along the base to make sure you don't expand there. Demo Vicious, you're live. Yes. Can you use the Phallicin Forte with the Apex extender? I want to say you can, but I'm not 100% sure. That would be a question for Perv. Let me see if I can chat him right now. Sorry. It's hard to multitask, believe it or not. You use the Fallicin. I'm texting so you guys can see it and not ignoring you. The Apex. We'll see if he answers in the next 20 minutes. If not, you gotta ask him. Okay. What do you recommend for girth improvements? I have first an entire book on the subject, but just go through, look for my principles of expansion, my interval pumping, and then anything that has anything to do with pumping on my YouTube channel, and then learn from that. If you don't want to do all that work, get my book. It has it all streamlined. Let's see. Okay. Jared. I started clamping of one set of 10 minutes, and the next day I had some pelvic floor strain. Any recommendations to avoid this? I'm doing soft clamping with rings. Okay, so what kind of pelvic floor strain did you have? Because that can be a wide variety of issues. For me, that's usually issues fully emptying my bladder. If you're having hard flaccid symptoms, we would probably want to look at some other way to apply this clamp. Sorry, the comment really threw me off guard. But yeah, it's really going to come down to what kind of hard flaccid or pelvic floor strain symptoms you have. Michael, what clamps do I recommend? Well, I sell clamps or BFR rings on peakmalphysique.com. That's what I personally use. I've seen good and bad things about M9's clamp. I have no real comment on it at this time. And then a lot of people have mixed opinions on hard clamping. And again, that's just something I want to look into a bit more, is what's actually useful with clamping and how to make it work for you. But for right now, my recommendation is to get a bunch of little cock rings and stack those to make your clamp. Is it normal to only gain about half an inch from 1,200 grams of extending? So that's about 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds in imperial weight, and need to go up to 2,000 grams, so about 5 pounds, plus overtime to keep gaining in permanent size. So that's very low weight to begin with. For reference, I am doing about 4.5 kilograms or 10 pounds right now with my Apex extender. However, I'm only wearing this for less than 40 minutes a day. So it really depends on what you're using, first of all. Second of all, there is a need for progressive overload, but you can do this two ways. One is with time, and there's going to be with weight. So you could technically crank up the time as much as you want. I don't recommend wearing a low tension device such as you're describing for more than 6 hours a day. That's when you want to start playing around with the weight. But ideally, you move to high tension stuff to save yourself the time and effort for wearing an extender all day. It's just much easier. You get much more out of it, in my opinion. Excuse me, guys. Is it normal to gain? Okay, we did that one. Living life. I've been pumping for a while, but my head expands and fills the tube, and the shaft doesn't seem to expand and want to get over 5 inches. So first thing, you need to do some Tunica release or Tunica malleability, whatever you want to call it. Basically, fatiguing the Tunica and relaxing the Tunica before pumping is going to allow it to expand more. So if you have a tough Tunica, you'll have an easier time. Secondly, some guys' glands will just expand much more over time because it's much thinner than the rest of the shaft. But there's going to have I've noticed a set size that you can get to. Meanwhile, you can constantly get edema on the shaft. So your glands will grow faster in general. But yeah, first thing, work on Tunica release, Tunica malleability 10 minutes before your routine. Maybe change your tube, maybe add heat. Okay, Sabor. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. You have been using the Quick Extender Pro for 2 hours, 2 sessions, one each 1 hour, and gained about half an inch in the first 6 months, which should be expected. And then you haven't gained any sense. So this is what's important about progressive overload. Your tissues are going to get thicker as they get longer. They're going to be able to hold more weight. So you're going to need to either add more time to fatigue them more, or you're going to need to add a stronger source of tension. I don't know how hard you're using the Quick Extender Pro. It's not that great of a device. Apologies. But getting a higher tension device is going to make it much easier to do this progressive overload. Bryce Keeney. Is there a way to localize girth? Like if you're trying to grow the mid shaft versus base or something like that. My shaft is not as wide as the base, and I would want to even out. So the first thing with the base girth, some of that is going to be your fundiform ligament. Since it wraps around the shaft, if you have a big fundiform ligament, it's going to look thicker than the rest of the shaft. You can technically circumvent this by making your mid shaft even bigger, but technically the shaft itself is now wonky. So that might not be your best bet. However, if you just get a tube, we've already talked about this, but if you get a tube that's about the same size as your girth at the base, it'll fill in the rest of it. Al Corona, I love your horsecock. I wouldn't say it's a horsecock yet, but thank you. I don't know if I should start my OnlyFans again. I really don't have time. Hard Vecchi, seems like the apex isn't long enough. Wouldn't there be any room to extend? The apex is like 14 inches. So like it can fit anyone that's smaller than 10.5 inches unaltered. And then I'm pretty sure Apex has custom order stuff, not Apex, Perv, Massive Novelties has custom order extensions. So you can get it as big as you need. Jared Keffer, I cannot answer any plans about Massive Novelties at this time. Any thoughts on causing for a big difference between horizontal versus vertical length? What? Is there any reason besides the tight suspensory ligament and high erection angle? So I'm assuming when you mean when you're laying down, you are longer or shorter compared to standing up. I had this issue for a while, and basically it's actually coming back now. From what I've noticed, it's pelvic tilt. So I'm going to stand up. Hopefully you can see my hips. Gotta wait for the stream to catch up. But essentially, your hips might go out too far back like this, or they might hunch forward like this. If they hunch back like this, it's going to put strain on the pelvic floor, and it's going to kind of pull your penis in a bit. So, essentially, oh, that is a beautiful angle. I'm catching it on the live now. But essentially, if your penis starts going under your pelvis in anterior pelvic tilt, you're going to be shorter standing. And if you have posterior pelvic tilt, you'll be shorter laying down. So you got to work on your hip flexors and abductors to get your hip posture correct. Then you could play around with ligaments, but that's not actually going to really change the length sitting down or vice versa. I am not taking off my shirt, Al, because one, that's not appropriate for this kind of stream, and two, I had a lot of chorizo yesterday, and I probably looked disgusting. So, excuse me. Man, went down the wrong pipe. Scotty said, I am using a Lelove pump but keep losing pressure even though I'm pressing hard against my groin. Any suggestions? First, are you lubing up? Second, is the white bulkhead at the top? Let's see. I don't think I have an open box. I probably shouldn't open this now. But there's a white bulkhead at the top of most pumps. Tighten that. If you're having issues with that, it would you would not feel like bubbling at the base. If you're having bubbling at the base, that means it's coming, the air is leaking from the base, so you're having issues getting a good seal. So you can try pump sleeve, you can also try a bunch of lube. Then you can also try to see if it's the pump handle. So if you take off the pump handle, disconnect, and you don't lose pressure, then it's going to be the pump handle that you need to replace. Okay, I lost some. What is more stimulating for a woman, the larger corpus cavernosum or largest corpus spongiosum? Did you ask this on Hank's stream yesterday? So the corpus cavernosum makes up 80% of the erection volume. That on its own is going to be the main driving factor for women's pleasure. Now, the way most women get pleasure from sex, particularly from the clit, is that it kind of comes down like this around the opening. So if you're able to push it out more, particularly with the corpus cavernosum, they'll get more clit stimulation. As for like deeper vaginal stimulation, it's still going to be mainly the corpus cavernosum. The corpus spongiosum is part of the glands though, so if you don't have like big soft glands, if you're particularly long in length, it might be uncomfortable for them. Okay, Marcos, a lot of your videos about PRP. I just one treatment 1 week ago. You need to do PE as often as possible right now. You should not take any rest because right now you are pulling in as much platelets as possible. That's part of the PRP response, is that the more platelets you get into the tissue, the more effective it will be. So you got to be pumping probably 1 to 2 times a day. Keep up with your length work if that's what you're going for, and then hope you have a bit of luck and you actually get a good response from PRP because it's so hit and miss. But you will see the increase in sensitivity. Other than that, it's just going to be luck in my experience. Yeah, Sabor. You don't necessarily need to get the apex. You can still hang. So that would be much easier to get into, probably, I'm assuming, your Middle Eastern country. So I know right now we're not going to the Middle East just because we get so many returns from customs. But you can probably find it like on Alibaba or AliExpress, like a vacuum hanger, and then use it that way. Nico, thoughts on midshaft clamping? Someone claims cable cups at the midshaft cause 0.5 in gains where the pressure was applied. No clamping at the base. So there is a phenomena when you clamp something that this pressure point is actually going to cause irregular blood vessel growth, because essentially it is looking for any possible way to relieve pressure in that area. So you'll get somewhat weird growth of blood vessels in that area. This is common with stenosis. So like spinal stenosis is when you have a disc pushing against the blood supply in the back, and that causes a weird branching pattern on the artery there. I'm sorry, I don't remember much about my high school anatomy course, so I couldn't tell you exactly it. But essentially, there is evidence that if you apply weird clamping pressure up and down the shaft, it will cause more growth. However, it needs to be chronic, and I don't think that's going to be the best way to get girth. So then with doing, say, midshaft clamping like you described, you will see more fatigue of the collagen in that area by chance, but it may not be the most effective way to go about it. Val, would you consider experimenting doing PE every day, but also doing Tunica release, measuring, and strain rate? I mean, I kind of did that at the beginning of 2023. So, like, I did PE for every day. I gained probably 1/4 of an inch in 3 months, but this is how I was able to track, like, my needed rest. And now that I'm doing it every other day, my needed rest is kicked down the curve. So like the cumulative fatigue that needs healed is pushed further down. So instead of having to take it every 3 to 4 weeks, it's now every 6 to 8 weeks. So it doesn't really matter if you're doing PE every day or every other day, but you're going to have to switch your own rest protocols around it. Ethan, hold on, I skipped Angelo. BD, is doing BFR massage for 5 minutes and tuna scraping enough for Tunica work? Should I add in semi-erect bends for optimal results? It is probably plenty, because BFR massage is going to mimic semi-erect bends, basically. It is like the second stage of Tunica release. So you're getting more pinpoint pressure, which is going to have a similar thing. I'm going to have to flip around to my other camera. Give me 1 second, guys. Uh-oh. Let's see. Video capture. Wait. Can I do it this way? Front camera. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. Did we not switch over here? Sorry, guys. All right, I am back. Where's chat? Okay, but yeah, the takeaway is that sorry, lost my train of thought. You only need about 5 to 10 minutes of Tunica release in general. So if you're adding a lot more exercises, unless let's say you have Peyronie's or like potentially a steel cord, which again, if you watched my last video on it, it's not that prevalent. You don't need to add in more stuff. Sorry, I'm now double clicking where I don't need to double click. Okay. I saw on the forum, says Ethan, the Phallicin Forte is actually 1,300 grams at high red, so high green is probably around 400. Even at 10 hours a day, that would increase size for most, right? Let's see, that would be 1 pound of tension. So that is like right below the cutoff point in like my curve chart, like, you know, progression chart. So like ideally you want to be like between 5 to 7 pounds 1 to 2 hours, or 3 to 4 pounds 2 to 4 hours for optimal gains and like, you know, lifestyle. So light green is not going to do it with my protocols. I know people have gained and probably the green zone, so it's not like the end of the world. I just don't think it's optimal. But you will need a lot more time in green compared to red if that's the case. Hat Wolf, I'm using a PMP pump. I'm getting a lot of expansion at the base, but not so much from the midshaft to tip. What could help me achieve even expansion? You probably want a pump sleeve to limit how much skin from the base pulls into the pump. We sell those for like a couple bucks on Peak Male Physique. Maybe not for a couple bucks because shipping's included. So it's probably like $5 to $6. I don't even know my own product prices right now, so forgive me, guys. Let's see, Jared. After clamping the next day, I get soreness in my taint. What would I do to fix this? Rest. So if you have soreness in your taint, and this is why I'm hanks against clamping, and I am apprehensive against clamping at this point, is that it is so easy to blow out your pelvic floor. And I wish I had my model with me here, but essentially, this is the clamp, right? And then behind this, there's more penis that is surrounded by a bunch of little muscles. So if we're clamping and we kegel and we're trying to get more blood into this, it's already at max pressure. Guess what? All that blood is going to build up here, and then since those muscles are flexing against something that is harder than they're used to, they will strain, and that's going to lead to pelvic floor pain. So you're going to need time. Just be happy it's only pain and not like an actual like real strain, because that's what causes hard flaccid and everything else like that. Okay, are we not looking up at the ceiling now? We'll find out in 30 seconds. And Marcos, you are welcome. I'm glad you subscribed. Let's see. Give me 1 second, guys. I don't like how I can see the lights on the street. So we are going to try to move over here. I've got to build a base of penis pumps to hold up my laptop. Oh. Okay. That's probably good enough for now. Okay, Sleep Diver. Can zinc or icarin supplementations properly reduce 5-alpha reductase enzyme? I do not know. I know zinc is a precursor to HGH and icarin helps with nitric oxide, but I've read studies about their anti-DHT action. So I know Hank formulated Fortitude with enough icarin, horny goat weed, to not cause hormonal issues unless you're super sensitive to anything that's anti-DHT. So for that case, you are probably fine. Let me see what's on the bottle real quick. Let's see. Can I read today, guys? I cannot read today, guys. Oh my god. I'm feeling really dumb because I cannot see it on here. But Hank just did a video on horny goat weed. Whatever he said to do, do. I just can't believe I can't find it on here right now. Maybe they're calling it something else I don't realize. Anyway. Question on what kind of timescales would you assess whether a certain routine is working for a beginner or not? Is gaining length within a pump a good sign of progress? So any practical changes in size in pump is like within a reasonable amount. So like in the first 10 minutes, if you're slightly bigger in the pump, that's progress. If you take an hour longer to pump and you're bigger in the pump, that is not progress. That being said, it is not your true size, and it's probably not even going to be your size with an erection at that point. When do we want to gauge a routine's practicality? First and foremost, pay attention to your erection quality. That has always been my number one indicator. And like honestly, how horny I am is a good precursor for PE. In general, like if I'm like dialed in, I am super horny. It's just kind of how I am. But again, I'm super sensitive to this stuff. So that might not be the best bet. Then if we're looking at like the actual mechanics, sorry, I gotta fix something real quick. We're looking at the actual mechanics of penis enlargement. We need to be about 2% longer at the end of your session. So let's say you are 6 inches. You're going to want to be like 6 1/8 to 6 1/4 after your sessions when you pull out on your penis. This is called fatigue rate. It's a pretty good proxy to see if you're getting sufficient work. And so far, out of the 8 or 9 months that I have tracked strain, I have saw gains that month because I was hitting those metrics. So it's a kind of the pain in the ass, but once you like dial it in, you won't really need to track strain all that much because then you'll know what you're looking for physically. So yeah. Okay, Siegfried, would specializing on girth work yield faster than going after length and girth, or do the practices complement each other? So you will probably want some sort of ratio between length and girth. I teach for length like 80 to 90% of your routine is going to be length focused. Then you're going to do about 10 to 20% of girth focus. So if we extrapolate from that, we want our girth work to be 80 to 90% girth work, and then 10 to 20% length work. And in this case, length work would be anything that's Tunica release, since we're specifically targeting the collagen fibrils. So yes, you do want some bit of both, but if you're trying to optimize for one or the other, you want to make sure like the entire workload that you're doing is mainly focused on girth or length, you know, whatever you're focusing on. Samuel Benner. Now that I'm through the simultaneous Verbio ads, I hope y'all are doing well. Yeah, I even switched the YouTube to conservative ads. So, like, they're not going to play as many, but, YouTube's got to make a penny off me somehow. Real quick, Brandon, when are auto pumps shipping out? We ordered a lot from our manufacturer. They're shipping out this week. It's going to take another 2-ish weeks to get in my hands. So, apologies for the wait. Blue Shinigami. I think I said that right. I have an extender with the rods like the Pina Master Pro, but it's a cheaper version. Are those low tension ones? How long do you think I need to wear them to get any? It is more than likely low tension. You can actually replace the springs in them, though. I used to know a site, but I think they're out of business where you can get springs to replace it. That being said, you're going to need to wear it for at least 4 hours at about 1,200 grams of pressure. Man, I really want a hair tie. Let's see. I might have a hat. Give me a second. Wait. Got lost in the wires. All right. Hold on. I'm having computer issues now, too. When are BFR rings going to be in stock? Again, we ordered at least 2,000 sets. So, again, that should be within the next week or so. I think I shipped it directly to my assistant this time, so he might just be hoarding them. I'll have to message him later. Do you also think horny goat weed is as good and nearly necessary as Hank? All right. So I think you guys know I'm a little bit of a nihilist when it comes to supplements, but this is completely biased. I make money off of my own products, obviously. The best way to put my experience with Fortitude, because that's going to be the main thing that we're talking about, right, is that it makes my erections as frequent as it is with Cialis, and just not nearly as hard. And again, Cialis, it would be like a 10 out of 10 every time at about 7.5 grams of Cialis. With Fortitude, it's about an 8.5 to 9 out of 10. But I'm getting them as frequently as I did with Cialis. So there is a definite help with taking the horny goat weed. However, if money's tight, you won't absolutely need it. And I think... Sorry, my computer's being funny. Let me see what happens when I refresh the page. If the stream ends randomly, I am sorry. It shouldn't, though. Okay. We're still good, right, guys? It looks like it. And it did the exact same thing again. So I'm used to working on a very expensive desktop at home. But here I'm just working on my Surface laptop. So like the processor's not the greatest. So I can't do as nearly as much as I would want to. Anyway. All right, we did Armin. Angela, how long should I wear the heat pad when pumping and extending the whole time? So there's a few different thought processes on this. One is going to be you want to wear it the entire time, and then that's it. Then with hanging with fire, 1 second, there we go. Needed some volume. With hanging with fire, you actually take off the heating element for the last 10 to 20 minutes, I believe. So, in that case, they're thinking that we're trying to keep the hydrogen bonds from forming when doing hanging with fire. So, like when we retract back, there's a chance that these hydrogen bonds will reform, and therefore we won't be as long. Now, that doesn't really make sense because the stimulus for growth is not determined by how much the collagen is really stretched. It's controlled by how much the cells, so like the stem cells of the penis and the integrins and all the other feelers in the extracellular matrix are stretching. If the collagen is fatigued, it's just a good indicator that that's stretched out the stem cells and all the other bits and pieces that are responsible for the growth response. So it shouldn't really matter if your collagen reforms, and that's actually less work than if you kind of try to keep the bonds open, because then the stem cells have to come back, put them back together, So right now, you probably want to heat the whole time and don't worry about like flash freezing it into a shape. Braden Espera, Espazara. Esparza. There we go. Brandon Esparza. Wait a minute. Goat weed is anti-DHT. At certain doses, that's what Hank has found. That's, again, guys, we're talking about a supplement. It is not going to, like, really change your hormonal profile enough to, like, let's say, cause estrogenic activity unless you're borderline already or a super sensitive person to a slight increase in estrogen. So for the most part, we are dosed at a point where it won't mess with DHT, but even then, it won't hurt you all that much. And then, does that correlate with hair loss? Maybe 1%. So you probably slow hair loss 1% if it's from DHT, male pattern baldness, androgenic male pattern baldness. Okay, Jared, the reason I switched from pumping to clamping is because I was losing sensitivity. My IQ was good, but I wasn't enjoying sex like I should. What should I do differently to help this? Okay, so we would need to know how long you were pumping for and what exactly you were doing after pumping. That inflammation and edema from pumping can actually dull out the nerves a bit, because like part of that inflammatory response pads everything around it so the tissue can't be damaged more. And if the nerves can't feel things, you're going to be less sensitive. So if you're getting a lot of subcutaneous edema, you'll just be less sensitive overall. Let's see. Garrett. How much rest is needed for girth work? Been pumping and soft clamping for 6 days and for 6 weeks, 0 gains aside from a thicker flaccid. Been supplementing HGW and L-citrulline. I don't know what HGW... Oh, horny goat weed. Okay. So 6 weeks in the span of PE is not that long. For the most part, if you measure today, it'd be in the margin of error. Meaning that it'll be hard to tell if it was just a measurement issue, and that's why you were bigger, or you were actually bigger. It usually takes about 3 to 4 months to actually see changes on the ruler. That being said, if you are doing more than 20 minutes of girth work a day, you probably need more rest than you have prescribed. Okay, where'd we go? Just clarification, when I say gaining size with a pump, I meant gaining size of a constant pressure over weeks and months. Thanks for your answer, though. Yeah, so like, as long as you're not, trying to fudge the numbers to make yourself feel better about yourself, it is a positive indicator. That being said, it may not necessarily be. We're talking about changes outside the ruler that could show that you are gaining. The issue with pumping is since it's going to pull in multiple kinds of edema. So we have subcutaneous edema, then we have internal edema in the tissue, which is going to stretch the tunica albuginea more. And then it's also going to stretch the blood holding tissue. That edema response in the internal tissue needs to be there to be able to push out maximum size. So like if you don't have the blood holding tissue, naturally you won't be able to hit your peak size, and that's why we're trying to push clamping to help get that hypoxic stimulant. Anyway, Hat Wolf. ABD, I've been doing length work for 3 months, took 2.5 milligrams the other day, and I found that I gained a quarter of an inch of BPL. Is that an indication of low EQ? Should I rest for a couple weeks? Okay, so that's a lot to gain with only 2.5 milligrams of tadalafil. Is that Viagra or is that Cialis? Either way, um, I think that that would have to be Cialis at that low of a dose, right? But anyway, you definitely have erection quality issues. It's probably not from the length work. It is more likely um, just lack of erection quality. So start doing cardio, start pumping, and that will help tremendously. All right, guys, I'm only going to go for about 10 more minutes because I got to get something to eat before I unload 700 pounds of vigor into this office. So, hat wolf. Okay, we did that one. Pitsy, can you grow from hanging only 20 minutes and not reaching fatigue, or are you just strengthening the tissues at that point? Okay, so Pitsy, uh, you could see erection quality improvements at that range. If you're not hitting fatigue in 20 minutes, though, after let's say about 4 months of doing that, you will start seeing just nothing. You wouldn't really see a strength adaptation unless you're pushing forward that strength adaptation by constantly adding weight, but it won't do much on its own without any kind of progressive overload. Papu I started at 6.5 in the pump, and after 10 minutes, I hit 7.5 inches. Is that much normal? Well, it depends. How long have you been doing PE, and how is your general health outside of penis enlargement? Because that is a relatively big jump. If you have a curve, though, that could also explain it. So, like, you would start pushing against the glass. Sorry, I got a email reminder for some meeting that I thought was tomorrow, and it is. So anyway, if you start pushing against the glass, the curve will straighten out, therefore you're longer. So it really depends on the individual. Nebby, I've been pumping for 30 minutes and then clamped with the Python for 30 minutes. It's been great so far, but do you think that what I'm doing is considered safe? I mean, it's just a lot of work, right? Personally, I don't do more than 30 to 40 minutes of girth work, like with expansive work at this point. But just keep an eye on it. I'm assuming you're going to have erection quality issues within the next month, though, just because it's going to be chronically overworked at that point. Nico, are you going to test the Python if M9 sends you one? So, I will do it only for you guys. I don't really care for the Python pump, but just because there is interest in it, and I just want to make sure you guys you're getting your value for the money, I will test it out unbiasedly. Blue Shinigami, damn, squeezing for 4 hours is going to be difficult. Or squeezing 4 hours is going to be difficult into my work schedule. Should I try integrating back hanging with extending? Yes, there's a reason why I do high tension stuff, because I only got maybe 50 minutes to do PE every other day at this point. So you got to work with what you can. Okay, I have bathmate already and use it with air only since it's more convenient. Is it necessary to have a pressure gauge to ensure 5 inches of mercury, or is it sufficient to go by feel? Okay, it's more or less like, why would you want to guess anyway? Because, like, there's a chance you're not in the working pressure range, so you're wasting your time at that point. So you probably do want an air pump just for that reason, to make sure you're not wasting your own time. That being said, it's still effective. You're not going to get nearly as much pressure with air in the bath bait as water, so it's relatively safe. It's just cut out the guesswork when you can to make sure you're not going crazy. Garrett, I'm assuming, I don't remember what else he said, but that seems like a fine amount of work. What was the rest of it? See, you know what I'd wish they implement for, like, YouTube live streams? The ability to, like, implement Chatterino, so that way I can click on who said what and then go from there. Yeah, I can't even find Garrett here, so. Okay, Jared, I use the auto pump, and I've tried 1 minute intervals and 2 minute intervals and still get a ton of edema. I always go hard into the pump. Okay, so this is something I've also learned, is that you can train the edema response. So, like, let's say you've been doing pumping for 2 years semi-traditionally, where you don't really care about the edema you get, you're going to get more edema each time because you're like training for it. So first thing is make sure you're not doing that. If that's the case, you probably want to stop pumping for 2 or 3 months and then come back and do interval pumping. Then, now that I've read the second message, I do 28 to 30 kilopascals. So that would be like 8 to 10 inches of mercury. If you are relatively new, that is a lot of pressure. I do about that much. And again, I've been doing this for a decade. So that's another thing. You might want to drop the pressure. Then, I'm just thinking of all the ways I get edema. If I'm using a tube that is too small, for example, I have a 2.125, so 2 1/8 size cylinder. Since my base can't expand and blood can't flow into my corpus cavernosum with it, I get so much edema at the tip because that's the only pathway to relieve this is through the skin rather than through the corpus cavernosum. So there's a lot of ways you can be generating edema. Finally, if you are an overweight individual, you'll always have a higher edema response, subcutaneous edema response, because there's just more water under the skin that can be pulled into the penis. Okay, 3 more minutes, guys. Mark, have you tried soft clamping and hard clamping at the same time? Kinda. It's just really not worth mixing, right? Because like you're just choosing 2 different stents and putting them on. It won't change much. I probably will blink twice regardless, but no, I'm not doing this against my will. Yeah, this office is a bit depressing. It should be filled with more boxes by the end of the year, though, so there's that. If I use water pump, do I need anything else to max out length and so on? Yeah, so like pumping's mainly for girth and erection quality. So if you're if you're cutting out the main drivers of length, which is elongation, then you're not really going to gain length. So bare minimum, you need to do manual stretches. I would recommend getting a vacuum hanger or compression hanger, doesn't really matter. And if you really want to spend money, get the Apex and use that. Anyone pre-order a pump from PMP in Europe? How long does it take to arrive? So it depends if we have any in stock. So a bare minimum is going to take about 10 days to get to Europe. And then you have to add the pre-order time in Dominus. The nice thing is, though, is we switched over to DDP shipping. So basically you guys pay customs up front for the most part, and you shouldn't have any issues with custom clearance. We haven't had as nearly many issues with returns that way. So any of you Europeans, let me know how well it went for you, either on Reddit, Peak My Physique, or email me. That'd be very helpful. Caleb Anthony, can you tell us about or make a video about how sex life has changed with PE? I did make a post on Reddit, and spoiler alert, not that much. It's not that I don't enjoy sex more, but it's more or less there's other factors that made sex better for me and my wife. Mainly that her, we'll just call it sexual repression, has been solved. So she was a little weird about sex, like a lot of women are, especially if, they've been slut shamed, even though they're not sluts, Just there's a lot of weird pressure put on women that we don't really think about as men. But basically her dad started slut shaming her at 9 or 10. So she started having hang-ups with sex. Her mom was kind of promiscuous, so she also had issues with the idea of sleeping around and everything like that. So it took a while for her to get comfortable, fully comfortable with sex. And then she had a thyroid issue, and we finally got that worked out this year, and sex has gotten much better just because we fixed the physical issues and then fixed the mental issues. Now, did my size changes have any impact in our own pleasure? Lately, yes. She enjoys me more when I pump up a bit. But, at my size, it's very easy to get too big too fast. So I can try to work a video on this. I would rather have her opinion on this, but she is a bit camera shy at the moment. Okay, I lost my spot. Okay, Project Crimson. I'm currently in puberty. Is there anything that might help me now that it won't work later for PE? I'm not going to tell you to take any drugs. So that's the only thing that would really have an impact. Right now, when I was 16, I definitely grew faster than when I do it now. So, like, just the fact that you're doing it during puberty, I'm not going to question your age, but I definitely came in faster. Like, I swear to God, guys, I gained like half an inch in a month when I first started doing stretches. So, like, I went from 6 to 6.5 in a month. And obviously, that did not keep up, but there might be something to it. And that's not a boat I really want to rock right now because, it's weird telling teenagers to pull on their dicks, right? FBI, if you're watching, it's only a hypothetical. None of this is medical advice, obviously. Okay. Nebby, is BFR massage and the extender more effective? So if you're going to massage in the extender, there is no reason to wear a cock ring because the reason for the cock ring is just to make sure the tunica is expanded to make it easier to press against. So if you're fully extended, you won't need to wear said cock ring. Philip Pierce, should you do your length and girth routines from your book the same day? You shouldn't really be mixing them at this point. That being said, I am playing around a bit with girth training during length. So far, I haven't measured girth yet just because I'm not interested in it. Like, I'm already quite thick. There's no real point for me to, like, worry about it as much as length. Same with length. But, length is easier to track in general, so that's what I've been focusing on. That being said, don't really mix them at this current moment. Okay, also, do you know why I started to get bleeding from the urethra from vac extending when I do with the apex at the same 6 pounds that I usually do? Okay, so if you're ever bleeding from penis enlargement, particularly from the urethra, where you're doing something catastrophically wrong, basically you have internal bleeding probably inside the urethra, and then that pressure is pulling that out. You're going to need to take time off, let that heal, and you probably want to move to compression hanging moving forward. Okay, this is not something to play around with. Make sure you take this time off and get something that is not going to put any pressure to pull blood out from your urethra right now, please. Okay, this is going to be a better question for Hank than me, though. Okay, I'm going to do these last three. Would doing protein sparring modified fast during gaining phase be okay, or should I be doing, I don't know, what PSMF during decon? Okay, the protein sparring. Okay, something that calorie restrictive is going to really limit growth. So, like, I am usually somewhere between a 750 to 1,000 calorie deficit right now. Has not impacted growth. However, going that crazy for fast results, one, is going to hurt you in other avenues, and two, there's usually a big rebound in weight. So if you're going to try to be fit and lean 24/7, your best bet is to start implementing long-term plans and don't worry about the weight loss and like the actual number on the scale, and continuously focus on the habits that you build to do this. So like if you're trying to look lean athletic, do what lean and athletic people do. They do cardio, they train abs, they watch what they eat, and they slowly metamorphose into a fit person. So the protein sparing thing, or that fasting, is a very hard thing to pull off. It will work, but it's not necessarily going to teach you the right habits to keep it off, is really what I'm saying. As for PE, you will have issues gaining if you're getting that severe of a deficit. I think I skipped over a question. Something about collabing with Perv, right? So the thing is like, there's a lot of legal ways to do joint ventures. So like, we would just sign a paper that, hey, me, the people at PMP and the people at Massive Novelties are working together on this project. We will split the profits and costs as follows, and that's it. One company could own the patent, yes. But as long as there's legal documentation saying that this is the agreement set apart for us using our resources together, we'll be fine. So, and we're not really at that point yet. And I haven't talked to Perv about this in a couple months, but anyway. Can pumping increase length or maximize length potential? Nico, I would say it maximizes length potential. That's a good way to put it, actually. But it can increase length too, because it's technically a form of fatigue. Okay, last one. Could I take 10 milligrams of Cialis every other day instead of 5 milligrams of Cialis every day? Yeah, but that spike's not necessarily the best. So what I do is I get 30 milligram pills. All right, I open these capsules. I get water. I dump the capsule in. I mix it up, and then let's say it is 12 ounces of water for easy math. I will drink 2 ounces of water to get 6 milligrams of Cialis, or 5 milligrams of Cialis. So you can do it that way. You can also split pills. And then what I do with my cup of water is I just put it in the fridge. And then the next day I drink another 2 ounces. And it's that simple. It is very easy to get your doses the way you want it. Okay, Ethan, I'm not against you making your diet complex, but like it's going to be just hard to stick to because like think about how much balancing you're doing right now. I have no problem if you playing around with this again, but like you got to think about this long term. I know you're probably trying to lose weight. I know you're trying to probably look ripped at this point, right? Do you think most ripped people are doing it this way? Like people that are constantly in shape, are they constantly doing protein sparing intermittent fasting, or are they doing different lifestyle habits to allow them to constantly be in shape? Just something to think about. All right, guys. I don't know when I'll do this again. I'm hoping to get a podcast with Perv and Hank done this week. But I got a lot of meetings actually this week. It's a little weird for me. But thanks for joining in on this random stream. I will see you in the next one. And I have a video on clamping filmed, so that should be available this week sometime. Books, pumps, what else? Leviathan. That's how you can support me. And thanks for tuning in.